Tristan Kumar's The Final Enigma. Volume 1. The Spread of Evil. Act 5. The Program's Secrets. Part 21. Slave to a Routine. Deshaun looked at me from across the cubicle. His sparkling eyes glittered in the sun as he watched me. He smiled, a handsome one that could make all the girls fall for him. We had already been dating for a couple months, and he planned to propose to me that night. We both smiled. I turned my chair and back to my computer. The screen went black to save power from me goofing around too long. I sighed and typed some letters on the keyboard. The blue screen came on and I saw the name, Samantha, on the screen. I clicked it and typed in my password. As the glitching computer tried to log me through its thousands of secret databases in the company I was working in, I looked back at Deshaun. He blew me a kiss, and I silently shushed him with my finger. We weren't supposed to be talking because our relationship was a secret to the world. I've already said who I am, but I'll say it again. My name is Samantha. I'm 23 years old, and the guy who's across the cubicle from me is Deshaun. Tall and dark and handsome, of course, and a year older than me. And he's about to ask me to marry him at 7 p.m. that very night. I looked at my computer's time, 10:35 a.m. There was still a lot of time left before the big event. Deshaun and I worked in the Spark program, located in a building called the Flare, in a strange world that we didn't even know the name of. We were told the world was going to end, so we would be saved if we hopped on a ship and worked an 8 to 6 job in a cubicle in the Flare for the Spark program, so we agreed. We were only 1 or 2 months into dating at that time. Oh my god. We loved each other, but with the harsh conditions of work and the supervision all around us, it was hard trying to get together after work before we had to get up the next day and do it all again. We were literally like a unit in the program, with no termination in the near future. I watched my computer finally turn on, and I clicked on the file I was just working on. I was writing a status report on the fuel for the Spark program in a long document. The document was already 12 pages long, and I had to make it 50 by noon. I laid back and sighed. "Samantha?" someone asked me. "Deshaun, I'm fine," I said, thinking it was Deshaun. "Deshaun left for his lunch break, and I'm here for the status report on the fuel. 50 pages long, remember?" The man informed me, and I immediately opened my eyes. I just recognized his voice. I sat up to the man standing outside my cubicle. It was a tall man with brown skin and a small beard. He seemed to always be wearing military clothes. He had a gun on his waist, and I looked up to his face. It was Jamal, my boss. The traumatized kid was tortured here and suddenly got karma and now controls it. "Sorry, boss," I said as I stood and lowered my head. No, you're good, Samantha. Just head to lunch and finish the paper afterward, alright?" Jamal said. Everyone thinks their boss is bad, but my boss is great. He was nice and understanding, unlike the previous job I had in the supermarket where my boss was fired on my last day for charges of domestic abuse. He was arrested, which is what he deserved. He didn't affect me, but it was the right thing to arrest him and get away from him. I walked past Jamal and smiled. He turned and walked slowly behind him. I reached the lunch area, got my lunch, and sat down, feeling embarrassed. Deshaun came over to me and sat down. "Hey, what happened?" he asked comfortably. "Nothing, I just had to talk with Jamal," I said as I ate what I was given. Surprisingly, the food was decently good. "Yeah, I saw you dozing off, but I didn't think to wake you after what happened last night," Deshaun started to say. "Hey, don't talk about that. No one was supposed to get hurt there, alright?" I warned, trying not to get anyone to notice. "Listen, those drunks were abusing you in the bar, so I had to step in. It's not my fault one's fingers snapped off and one needs surgery," Deshaun assured, and I shyly nodded. "Listen, after tonight, everything will be different, so just don't worry about it, alright?" "Alright, but I still think it wasn't right," I said, feeling nervous as I continued to eat. "Listen, we were just chilling in the bar when those punks came up and started to harass you. You ended up outside, cornered in an alley, so I had to come and protect you. It's what a husband would do. A good husband. And it was also just good instinct. Those idiots got what they deserve, so don't turn the tables and make you seem like the bad guy, alright? You are in the right," Deshaun said to me. After much thought, I finally decided to put it behind me and start over with Deshaun. "Alright. I can't wait to see you tonight. It'll be so much fun." Yeah, it'll be great. I have the whole night planned out, you'll see," Deshaun said, making me feel even more comfortable and safe with him. He was perfect. Not only was he handsome and all, but he truly meant everything to me. especially after last night. He picked up his tray with the leftovers of his food and went to dump them out. I quickly ate the rest of my food in the small lunchtime we were given and got back to my cubicle. As I walked to my cubicle, I walked past the office of Jamal, my boss. He was talking to someone online, but his conversation really caught my attention. "Listen, he's out of control. The mindless freak doesn't know what he's doing anymore," Jamal said from inside the office. I stopped walking and went closer to the office to eavesdrop. "Ever since that monster, what does it call itself, the final Enigma? I don't care. Anyway, ever since that thing possessed Rai, he's been so different," a womanish voice said on the computer which Jamal was on. "We need to set something out, Sylvie. How about you come to the flare and we can talk? Tomorrow evening, sounds good?" Jamal requested. "Sounds good. I'll see you then," the woman said as she hung up. I heard Jamal close his computer and walk to the door. I moved away from the door and started to walk away. I looked back and saw him staring me down, almost like he knew I was there. I gulped and turned down the aisle of cubicles and found mine. I sat down and turned on my computer. Jamal and someone named Sylvie were trying to pull the strings to topple an empire. I wasn't really sure who Rai was, but I would figure it out tomorrow evening. I watched as the final page finally printed from the printer. Everyone else stood behind me in line, waiting to use the printer as well. I grabbed my papers and headed back to my cubicle. The other cubicles around me were empty because it was nearing the end of the day and everybody was tired and about to go home after turning in their work. I stapled the thick stack of papers but heard someone call for me quietly. I looked around and found Deshaun in his cubicle. "Samantha, Jamal's been keeping an eye on you," Deshaun said quietly but urgently. "Yeah, I don't know why," I said. I wasn't sure if what I said was the truth or a lie. I wasn't sure if Jamal was just regularly watching me for no reason or because he knew I was listening to his and Sylvie's conversation. "Let's get out of here before anything else chaotic happens. Let's just have ourselves a fun and eventful evening, all right?" Deshaun planned as he stapled his stack of papers. "All right, let's go," I said excitedly as I left the cubicle and started walking toward the metal tray. Deshaun followed me and we placed our stacks of papers in the tray and walked to the head of the other side. Deshaun followed me and we placed our stacks of papers in the tray and walked toward the other side. I saw Jamal eye me as we walked out, but I kept walking faster, trying not to see him. Eventually, we reached the transport to get across. We both hopped on and Deshaun gave up a seat for me. I smiled as we rode across the large gap and onto the other side. The planet where the Spark program was very weird, though it wasn't even a planet. There were two sides of land. On one side was the flare, and on the other side was a regular city with hills, lakes, and mountains far off in the distance. We finally touched down and we walked together to our apartment, casually chatting about all the plans we had together. We headed inside and Deshaun headed to take a shower. After he was done, he changed as I got in the shower. As the hot water ran down my body, I still thought about the dark alley the night before. Deshaun beat up the men and sent them to the hospital, and now the police were most likely keeping an eye out for him when it should be me. I sighed and finished my shower. I got changed into casual clothes like he was in as well. We walked out onto the sidewalk arm in arm and began tonight. I looked behind me and saw a man in a hood. I gulped, for under the hood was someone who I hadn't thought would follow me. Jamal. Part 22. An eventful evening. I turned around and turned to Deshaun, who was enjoying the evening so far. "Hey, I'm a bit cold. Could we walk a bit faster?" "Alright, yeah, that's fine." "Hey, honey, don't tense up. It'll be fine," Deshaun comforted us as we began to walk faster. I nodded and turned back around. Jamal was gone. Was he ever there? "Hey, is everything alright? What's behind us?" Deshaun looked behind, but there was no one there. "What are you looking at? Let's just keep walking, alright?" I asked, and Deshaun turned back around and looked at me. He squeezed my hand tighter. "Alright," he simply said calmly. I nodded and we walked down the street. The wind blew the dead leaves off the trees as we walked down the narrow sidewalk. It was like living in the suburbs of Manhattan, but we were far from Manhattan. It didn't seem that the world we were in was a planet, but more like a dimension. We walked by a quartet of black jazz players. They were playing an Art Tatum-esque rendition of Ain't Misbehaving, from what I could tell. We both smiled as we walked by. I pulled out a small slip of paper and dropped it in the bass's case, which had many other tips. In the new world we were in, there was no official currency, but just slips of paper that indicated a show of gratitude for free. It was a much nicer way to do things, and you only earned 2 a day at the Spark program, so you had to make them count. I could hear the piano player start to solo on the magnificent keyboard as we began to walk away. I smiled as I looked up and saw the small building of the flare above us. "No, you're enjoying yourself, I see," Deshaun said, and I nodded. "It's nice," I replied. "What is?" Deshaun asked. I thought about my surroundings and thought of all the good things of where we were. Although Earth would have been the ideal place to get married, this would have to do, and it would do nicely. "Just peace," I said, and he nodded. "It's significantly better than Earth, in my opinion, I'll say," Deshaun mentioned, and I chuckled. "I mean, like, what year is it on Earth right now? Like, 2046 or something?" "I know, it's around late July, and that's all I need to know when I'm with you," I said as we walked past a couple holding hands. The woman nodded at me, and I smiled as we simply passed each other and continued with the peaceful night. Eventually, we reached a large street, but there were no cars. The only form of transportation in the dimension was public transport to cross the sides because regularly crossing it would be too dangerous. We walked into the spaced out crowd of people and walked past them to the fountain. We walked around the fountain and saw other lovers there kissing. I didn't look and wanted to save it for myself later that night. I could hear a street pianist playing an Art Tatum style rendition of Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. We walked past him as he smiled at us and nodded. Everyone was so friendly here. I could hear him scaling up and down the beautiful black keys as we walked into the restaurant at the end. We walked inside the busy restaurant and a young man with a mustache came up to us. "Hi, welcome to Tony's Pizza Place. Reservation, take out or dine in?" the man said in an Italian accent. "Hi, reservation for Samantha," Deshaun told the host. "Alright, let me look," he said as he began to scroll through the screen he had for our reservation. "You named it after me, I see," I said smirkingly, and I smiled. "Yes, I did indeed, Samantha," he said as he placed his hand around my neck and onto my shoulder. I watched as everyone in the kitchen worked hard at work. One tossed the dough into the air while the other spread the sauce and sprinkled the cheese. It was the ideal version of a world where there were no wars or conflicts, and everything was simply peaceful. "Aha, there you are, the outside reservation. Follow me," the host said, and we followed him. He took us outside by the pianist and sat down. "Table 42 is all yours. I'll be right back with the menus," he said as he jogged inside. Sorry, it's outside. I booked this like a month ago in excitement," Deshaun apologized. No, you're all good," I said, making her feel better. Suddenly, we heard a door quickly open across the plaza and yelling. "How do you feel now? You full and ready to do more work, or do I have to keep listening to you, woman?" a man yelled in a deep voice. The plaza went quiet, and the pianist slowly stopped playing and started to watch, and many other people left before the action happened. "I just wanted to get the old you back. A regular date with no problems," a woman said, sounding in tears. I watched as Deshaun started to stand up. "Don't. You know what happened the last time you did this," I warned him, and he sat back down but continued to watch the argument from around the fountain. The only thing I could see was the girlfriend with brown skin and a blood-red dress with a boyfriend in a leather jacket and pale white skin. "There ain't no reason that you can't stop me beating you right now," the man yelled, and this alerted the piano player. I watched as he grabbed his cane and began to walk over to the man. I winced at the thought of the terrible thing that was about to happen. "Come on, old man, get back here," I said to myself in my head, but it wasn't out loud, so he continued to walk. Then I heard it. The slap. The woman screamed and fell against the base of the fountain. I saw Deshaun clench his fist in anger, but I touched him softly to make him forget about it. Finally, the abuser noticed the old black piano player walking toward him. "What do you want, you old geezer?" he yelled at the old man. "Listen, don't treat this kind of mistake this way. She doesn't deserve this. No one does, as a matter of fact. Why don't you just leave the plaza and go your separate ways?" the man suggested nicely. I thought it would be a nice idea as well, but then I remembered who he was dealing with. "Why are you even butting in our conversation, you old hunk? Get back to playing piano. Play something snappy, will you? I want to deafen out this next part," the ruined man said as he walked right up to the old man's face. "I strongly advise that you take my advice," the man said. "I said get back there, boy," the man said as he punched the old man in the face. I turned away from the violence as I heard the entire plaza gasp. "Samantha, I am a fool for sitting here. I need to go and help him," Deshaun said as he grabbed my hand. I opened my eyes and looked at him. I didn't know what to do either. I looked at the old man on the ground bleeding from his broken nose. "I'm coming with you," I said, finally getting involved. He nodded, and we both stood up and began to walk toward the man who stood over the old man. "I'll help the injured, and you take care of the other man. Remember, don't send him to the hospital or kill him," I told Deshaun. "No promises," Deshaun said as a joke, but as he walked ahead of me, I realized that he maybe wasn't joking. He was going to seriously hurt the man. I went to the old man and helped him up. "Are you all right, sir?" I asked as I brought him to his feet. "My nose," he tried to say, but it made it harder to understand due to his injury. The host from the pizza shop came and helped me take him inside. As we supported the man, I heard Deshaun shout at the man. "Hey, leave her alone!" he yelled at the man. "Oh, so you want to get involved too? Well, huh?" he yelled. "Leave her alone," he warned again. "Ah, you stupid black people are deaf, ain't that right?" the man said. Deshaun looked out at his brown-skinned fist and clenched it. "I said to back off!" He punched him in the nose and the racist man fell back. He cursed so that the entire plaza could hear, loud and clear. Deshaun grabbed the back of the man's head near the fountain edge and started to bash his head into the fountain. More and more blood started to appear as he continued to hit him. Suddenly, I saw red and blue lights flashing around the corner. Supposedly, I hadn't known that there were cops with actual transportation. Clearly, I hadn't been there that long and knew that much. I heard the sirens come closer and closer, so I ran to the fountain and Deshaun. Deshaun's flannel jacket was beginning to be covered in blood. The cop cars turned around the corner and stopped at the edge of the plaza. "Take that, you ungrateful, racist piece of shit!" he yelled, but the police sirens deafened everyone around not to hear the rest. The police ran up and stunned Deshaun. I screamed in shock as they grabbed the two limp bodies of the racist man and Deshaun and took them to their cars. They didn't even bother to check on the woman, so I ran to her. She was more brown than I was. I helped her up onto her shaky feet, and she thanked me. "Oh, thank you," she said with a large bruise on her face. "No problem. We're in this together," I said as I watched the police cars turn the corner and leave the action of the night. I stood with a woman in the plaza as the silence returned, leaving me without my lover and without a proposal to happen that night, now that the love of my life was gone. Part 23. The Meeting. Someone came to help the lady as I sat on the bloody edge of the fountain and thought about what had just happened. I interlocked my fingers in thought and looked up to the sky. I knew that this would happen and I should have done something. I shook my head. It wasn't Deshaun's fault. He was only trying to fight for what he thought was right. That was what I loved about Deshaun. I sighed. There wasn't much I could do about it at that point. He would probably just spend the night in jail. I didn't even know where he was, so I couldn't go and visit him. "Thank you again," the lady said with shaky legs as the other people in the plaza took her away. I nodded at her and turned back to the sky. I heard the pianist start to play T for Two by Tatum. It sounded sad as I stood up and decided to head back to the apartment, without a future husband by my side to protect me. The peace was broken. I walked back down the sidewalk as the leaves crushed under the pressure of my feet. The quartet from earlier was gone now, so I walked in silence. I walked past a couple smiling as I walked down the street following a little kid. I watched as the kid looked at me in awe. His mom nudged him along and apologized to me quietly. I smiled and watched as the couple walked down the streets. I wish that could have been tonight, but like I said before, the peace was broken now. For the first time since we got there was a public fight with consequences, reminding me of Earth, how terrible it all was. My smile from the child faded away as I returned to walking in gloomy silence. I reached into my pocket and grabbed my apartment keys. I walked up the stairs and unlocked the door. I walked into the apartment and closed the door to prevent the chilly winds from coming inside. I took off my coat and somberly hung it up and sat down on the couch, depressed. I was still very upset about what had happened. I thought that we should have just let it go, or at least I could have helped. It wasn't Deshaun's fault, it was that stupid racist's fault. Everyone in the plaza saw that. I decided to turn on the TV. There was some peaceful piano music playing while showing scenes of the place I was working in. No dialogue, just a constant stream advertising the place we already worked in from 8 to 6. I turned it off and sighed. I eventually stood up and walked to the small refrigerator we had in our small kitchen. It was like living in Europe on Earth. Everything was too small, but we got used to it and made it useful. I opened it and looked at what I had. I had some beer bottles from all our fun nights together and some leftovers. This basically presented two options for me: drink myself to sleep, or actually eat something healthy for me. I sighed as I reached for the leftovers of the cold pasta we had made 3 nights ago. I remembered how much I was laughing at the terrible cooking skills that Deshaun had and how he tried to play it off as a masterpiece of food art. I smiled as I placed it in the microwave and set it to warm for 2 minutes. 2 minutes later, I took it out and ate it. The rest of the night was pretty simple and bland without Deshaun to make it interesting. I felt like such a boring person when I was by myself, which was basically the truth. I cleaned the dish and went to our bedroom. I quickly changed into my work clothes, not bothering to try to wake up earlier and change again. Besides, the Spark program didn't really care, but it didn't matter. I turned off the light and got into my soft bed. I turned toward Deshaun where he usually would put his arm around me while we slept, but there were just a bunch of undone blankets. He was gone. I looked up at the dark ceiling and sighed. The night had not gone as planned, and I didn't like that. I woke up in the morning and got out of my bed. I looked at the clock near my bed, 7:31 a.m. I smiled. For once in my life, I wasn't going to be terribly late, and I could see Deshaun later. I got up and got ready for work, although I had already changed. I grabbed some more leftover food and headed outside. I jogged down the street to the station. I quickly ran up the stairs with the transport to the other side and luckily hopped on the last transport until 20 minutes later. It was like a large tram going between the two lands up and above. I panted as everyone else in the cart watched me. Sorry, I said quietly as I stopped to control my breathing. We reached the other side and I jumped off first away from my annoyed coworkers. I walked to my cubicle and saw Jamal looking at me. You have a good evening? He asked nicely. I wasn't even sure if I could trust him or not after what I saw about him following me last night to the plaza. He could have been the one who got Deshaun arrested. Yeah, it was okay. By the way, Deshaun's not coming to work today. He had other things to do. He was sick, I lied, and he nodded. Oh, all right, thank you for letting me know. Have a nice day then, he said as he watched me go to my cubicle. I turned around and saw him still watching me, almost menacingly, as I sat down in my cubicle. I shrugged it off and turned to my computer and lazily turned it on. I sighed. My new paper was to write 20 pages on the main purpose of the Spark program. It was to advertise to people, although they would probably never even read it when they had decided to come here. I sighed and began by typing, The Spark program is great because... But I stopped. I couldn't actually think of anything. I could say, they may take away the love of your life, or the bosses watch you creepily, or even, there are so many secrets going on here that you will never have a way of finding out due to the strict security and confidentiality of everything. So many ideas ran through my head, but I lazily typed the ideal company lie. The Spark program is great because it's a nice change of pace and very beautiful here in the summer. I sighed as I shook my head at the plain lie I just typed. I wish I could say the time passed by quickly due to the immense amount of boredom I was having, but I would be telling a lie again. It was already 4 p.m. by the time I reached 15 pages. I groaned and laid my head down on the keyboard. How could I go on like this? Like a robot in a simulation? Like a slave to a routine? I contemplated leaving and facing whatever danger was back on Earth, but then I heard a sound come from above me. I sat up and poked my head above the cubicles and looked around. There didn't seem to be anything, but I suddenly heard a female voice coming from Jamal's office. I had completely forgotten about the meeting that he had scheduled with a person named Sylvie where they discussed the madman on the phone yesterday. Turns out that instead of the evening, it was now the morning. I stood up to investigate but immediately sat back down. I grabbed a water cup as an excuse to get some water, which was coincidentally right next to Jamal's office. I walked past the other workers. Most of them were asleep. I smiled as I walked to the water, and I began to listen to Jamal and Sylvie's conversation. I'm not going to bother to say what I did, because I just stood there at the door and listened to the whole time. Not that much. Aw, Sylvie, it's been too long, Jamal said as I heard him stand up and walk to hug Sylvie. Oh, thanks, Jamal. It's good to see you too, she said as they departed and both took seats. I took away that they were good friends, which was pretty obvious now that I think about it. Well, how are things at the prison? He asked. Oh, terrible. Rai is losing control. I mean, yesterday, he killed another variant of that guy who knew Godring, you know? Sylvie said, trying to remember his name. Yeah, I heard. Agent 38? No, Agent 39, he helped. Yeah, Rai threw him out of the prison, Sylvie said. But he's not dead, right? Jamal asked. No, they'll live. He's part of the Travelers now, but still, sooner or later he's going to find out about them and burn them to the grounds, Sylvie warned as I listened in confusion. So, are we going to talk about why you came here, or do you just miss me? Jamal asked, suddenly changing the subject. I know that we need to stop him, but we can't. It has to fall to the survivors on Earth like the outcasts and the Travelers. We're playing a Jenga game, and all we can do is slightly move the pieces so they're about to fall, Sylvie said. And the rest of the survivors have to push them fully out. I get it, Jamal said as they both thought in silence. I've got an idea, Jamal brought up, and Sylvie seemed to nod, wanting to hear it. There's this... Actually, let me whisper it to you so no one hears, Jamal said, as he seemed to stand up and move to Sylvie. I heard him whispering, but it was too quiet for me to hear. I shook my head in disappointment and prepared to head back to my cubicle, but I heard Jamal go back to his seat. It could work. We just need to convince them, Sylvie said. I trust them, and I know what they're planning. Anyway, have you heard about it? The project? Yeah, it's insane. It's gonna kill everyone left, Sylvie said. It'll be unstoppable, but we need to place a weakness in it somewhere. We need to take down Rye, and taking that thing down will be our only shot at helping the travelers and the outcasts. And it'll all be down to Samantha and Deshawn then, Sylvie said. I gasped and accidentally dropped my water cup. What was that? Jamal asked as he got up. I silently moved, but he opened the door and spotted me. Samantha, would you come in here, please? He asked. I gulped and turned around. He looked at me dead in the eyes. I knew that I was part of the plan, but I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. Part 24. All eyes on me. With no way out, I gulped and walked into Jamal's office. I saw Sylvie sitting in the chair. I waved to her, and she nodded at me. Take a seat, Samantha, Jamal said seriously. I slowly took a seat next to Sylvie. She had dark skin and black hair. She wore a purple t-shirt and black pants with boots. I'm Sylvie, Sylvie introduced herself, and I shook her hand nervously. She was a bit older than me, but not much. She was like me, but better. So, what were you doing outside? Jamal interrupted, ruining the moment. I started. Yeah, if you were about to say you were just getting water, you're fired, Jamal said, and I gulped. This was the first time I had seen him agitated like this. Okay, I was listening to your conversation, I admitted, while every single cell in my body booed at me for my answer and giving up the truth so easily. What did you hear? He asked menacingly. I looked at Sylvie, but she looked back at me. She raised her eyebrows, looking for a response. Not much, but something about Rye and a project, I said, as some of my cells started to leave the stands for how bad I was acting. I couldn't help it. I was going to lose my job if I didn't do the right thing, so I spoke my mind. I was scared. Jamal looked at Sylvie and eventually looked back at me. Anything else? Jamal asked. Something about a Jenga game, I said. Yep, she heard our whole conversation. Great, Jamal immediately said as he stood up and started to pace behind his desk. Listen, why are you trying to get me involved in this plan of yours? I asked. Jamal stopped pacing and both Sylvie and Jamal looked at me. I gulped again. Why was this encounter so ominous and scary for me? You're not ready for that yet, Jamal said as he sat down. No, she's ready, Sylvie argued. She's not ready for the truth, Jamal said. She needs to hear it if she wants to join, doesn't she? Sylvie said as they both stood up. Tell me, I'm ready, I said, which I wish I hadn't. No, Jamal yelled. Yes, Sylvie yelled at the same time. I shut my mouth and looked up at them. They were like a married couple arguing with each other. She wants to know, so let her know. She's just the first person. We still need the other, Jamal said. Deshawn? I asked, now curious again. Jamal closed his eyes in frustration from me eavesdropping. Future advice, Samantha? Don't eavesdrop and then tell the people who you just listened to what they just talked about. We know about Deshawn, but he's locked up somewhere, and we don't know where, Jamal said. Wait, what? I thought you arrested him. That wasn't you? I yelled in fear, knowing that he wasn't in safe hands. No, of course not. There's some old workers from the old Spark program with Chris. They're rogue and unhinged. We can't track them, and we don't know what they'll do, Jamal explained as I laid back in my chair. This took a turn and became much worse than I had thought. Sylvie actually noticed me and kneeled next to me to comfort me. Listen, I know that you think this is bad, but he's gonna be fine, Sylvie tried to comfort me, but I knew exactly what she was doing. Do you know where he is? I yelled as tears started to fill my eyes. They both stood in silence, for I had finally found a problem that they couldn't solve. We don't know exactly, Sylvie said, but I interrupted her again. I didn't plan to stop until they knew what they had done to me. Do you know if he is safe? I yelled at them as tears started to stream from my eyes. No, but, Sylvie said, trying to stop me, but I wasn't done. Do you know who you took away from me? I screamed at the top of my lungs, and I heard everybody outside stop and listen. I fell to the ground as the two looked at each other. Jamal walked to help me, but I stood up. You have no idea what it's like, I said with a shaky voice. Samantha, please don't. We need you, Jamal started. I don't care about your plan, I said as I walked to the door. I turned back to them. Thinking I was done, Jamal sat down and sighed. I cared about him, and now he's probably already dead, I said. I opened the door and slowly walked out. Everyone watched as I walked to my cubicle. I printed the papers and stapled them and turned them in. I didn't plan on finishing something for a company that assured me nothing and did nothing. So we walked outside and tried to stop me, but I heard Jamal stop her. She gloomily walked inside as I walked away from the Spark program. I got in the empty transport and started to descend to the other side. I tried to sit down, but I ended up on the ground instead. I tucked my knees and began to cry harder than I already was. Deshaun could be dead. I always thought that he was in pain, but no, this was also killing me. I knew that I had to find him, but I had no one to support me, to help me. The transport began to slow down, so I wiped away my tears and stood up. The transport stopped, and I walked out. I walked down the stairs into the busy street full of walking people because there were no cars or anything like that. I walked through the dense crowd and walked down a long street with many stores on the side. I walked past it and entered the plaza that I had visited with Sean last night. I noticed a black jazz pianist playing All the Things You Are by Chet Baker. He had a white bandage on his nose from his injury last night. He noticed me and nodded at me in thanks. I nodded back at him gloomily, but I was still upset over Deshaun's whereabouts. I didn't know where he was, and that worried me majorly. I sighed as I walked around the fountain. I noticed the dried blood on the fountain's edge. I turned to the pizzeria where we were supposed to eat at last night and saw the lady who had been abused wave at me with a guitar in her hand. The host from last night walked outside to check on her, and she waved at me too. I decided that I had nothing else to do, so I walked over to her. I patted the pianist on the shoulder as I walked past him, and he chuckled. How are you? I asked. I'm much better now. I can't thank you enough, she said as she stopped playing her guitar. No, it's fine. I hope you get better soon, I said, and she nodded at me. I turned to the waiter. Have you seen your boyfriend lately? He said as he tapped his fingers on the lady's chair in a musical beat. I thought about telling him the truth or the lie. I knew that if I said I didn't know where he was, they would help me and would probably get hurt by the rogue employees of the Spark program. I decided it was better to keep them safe, so I said, yeah, he's coming back out tonight. He's been a bit sick. Thanks for asking. I nodded at all three of them. The only real people who didn't know much didn't mind. These were my true saviors. People who didn't butt in on me. I walked away from the pizzeria and went to my apartment. As I walked down the street, I noticed that the quartet was back. They were just taking a break and didn't actually have a song to play at the moment. How you doing, Samantha? One of them asked. I was a bit confused about how he knew my name, but I answered. I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Any song requests for us? He asked me. Sorry, guys, I got nothing, I said. They nodded as they started to discuss more songs to play. I continued to walk to my apartment. I walked on the crunchy leaves on the sidewalk as I eventually reached the stairs of my apartment. I sighed as I walked up the stairs, unlocking the door and walked inside and closed the door. Suddenly, I heard a mysterious piano chord. I gasped and turned around. I saw a keyboard in my living room that wasn't there before. In a large chair, there was someone who had played it. They played another chord like a lightning bolt hitting the ground suddenly, ominously, dramatically. I slowly walked toward the piano as the person continued to play. The mysterious tone echoed through my apartment. Suddenly, the person let go of the pedal and the room fell silent. I stepped on a creaky floor and held my breath. You know, you wouldn't think that in a small town full of good and bad people, the ones who would stand out as the best ones were the musicians, but that's how it is. Strange, isn't it? The mysterious man in the chair said. Who are you? I asked, scared. Someone who you thought was so far away, but at the same time, the person turned around and revealed himself to be the one and only Deshaun. He was right in front of you the whole time, baby. Part 25. The Harmony of Love. I immediately ran to him, and we finally embraced after so long. I began to cry into his shoulder. He patted my back and slightly pushed me away. I thought you were, I stuttered. Dead? In the hands of the enemy? You wouldn't believe how much I've been through in the last 24 hours, honey, Deshaun explained, happy to see me. I wiped away my tears and begged to hear more. Please, tell me what happened. Well, yes, I was taken away by the mysterious people who acted like cops, but they weren't actually the previous workers of the Spark program, he said as we sat down. They told me that the man and the woman who was hit by him were both part of it as well. They were just actors. They said that they were old employees of the Spark program, but they also said that they were ordered by Jamal, Deshaun explains, and I gasped. Wait, he said that he had no idea where you guys were, though. He said that you guys were the enemy, I said. Ah, that was his trick. He only gave us orders wherever we were, but he never actually knew where we were. He was only trying to protect us by not knowing where we were, so if someone like his friend Rai came and investigated, he could say that he didn't know where they were and not get caught. The only thing he knew about us was what we were, but no one bothered to ask that. Anyway, they told me that they were all spread across the city, and he said that he was going to get you and me out of this crazy dimension to try to stop the madman Rai in the real world. He told us all that he had failed at getting you on board, so he told me that it was time to come and get me. So, I came right back here, baby, Deshaun explained, as it all came together in my head. Maybe I should have listened to him. What do you call yourselves then? I asked. I know it sounds a bit obvious, but we're called the Musician Society, Deshaun explains. All right then, what's next? What's the plan? I asked. Well, we're going to burn the city down and send everyone back to Earth just so we can get back there, Deshaun explains. I gasped, but Deshaun comforted me. It's for the greater good. Jamal tells us that there's this large secret project his friend is planning, and we need to spread the word to the survivors of Earth and destroy it before it's too late. The other people will maybe help us or just go back there because it isn't safe here anymore after Rai is going to come here. When are we going to put this plan into action? How long do we have? I asked urgently. They said that the moment I meet you and catch you up, it'll begin, Deshaun said, and I went quiet. I listened carefully to hear anything happening outside, but there was nothing. Then, why did we leave Earth to come here? Why did we write those many papers for the Spark program? I began to ask. All of this was to lead us to this moment, Samantha. It was supposed to be us that would find out and take down the Empire. Us alone, here, Deshaun said as he softly grabbed my shoulders and explained everything to me. Everything we've done in the past year has led us to this moment, this one chance we have at getting out of here and the slim chance to save the real world. No more fantasies. We were chosen. Don't you want that, Samantha? A chance? Deshaun explains, and I began to understand. I nodded at him with confidence. But we've known this place for so long. Won't you miss it? I asked. Trust me, I'll be fine wherever I am as long as I have you, Deshaun said. With that, I moved forward to embrace and kiss him, but I suddenly felt a large explosion happen outside. I backed away from him and gasped. All right, it's about to happen very fast, so there'll be no more time to explain things. All you have to do is follow me. Are you ready? He asked me as I looked around nervously. I looked at him and nodded. All right, let's do this, Deshaun, I said, as he walked to the door and opened it. He held it open as we both walked outside. He closed it for the final time, and we both looked at the door one last time. Deshaun! Someone yelled down the street. It was one of the quartet members. We both ran up to them, and they nodded at us. Tom, what's going on? Deshaun asked one of them. You all ready? He asked. Why does everybody make this seem like the world is ending? It's not that big of a deal, right? I asked. You'll see, ma'am. No, we will see it up close, one of them said, but Deshaun immediately looked worried. You're not coming, he asked the members. Deshaun, you are young. You both are young. We are old fellas. We have seen many generations pass, and the last thing we can do is sit and play. But we're all out of songs, they chuckled. Deshaun nodded sadly, and I looked at them. They wouldn't be around much longer, and if this was what they wanted, I would respect it. They wanted to give us a chance. Suddenly, I heard a large explosion in the sky. We all looked up and saw many flames begin to rain down from the flare on the land above us. Run, one of them said. Run together. It'll all be quick, but stay with each other, and just maybe, he said, you'll make it. The pianist sat down and began to play the beginning part of Come Sail Away by Styx as we began to run. In their distinctly scratchy voices, they sang the lyrics together. I smiled as I heard them sing from their hearts. We ran into the plaza as many large flames hit the buildings and began to light them on fire. The lady from yesterday sat with the pianist, and the waiter came up behind them and began to play the next part of Come Sail Away so that we could hear. I smiled as they began to sing the chorus, and we ran around the fountain. Deshaun grabbed my hand, and we looked at each other, eye in eye. We smiled. It was just us now. We ran past the plaza and down the next street. Everybody was already running up the stairs to get on the transport. We tried to make it on, but It closed, and we were now stuck all alone on the other burning side. "What now?" I said as the entire land started to catch on fire. It was all falling apart. We looked at the large gap between us and the flare, and I suddenly noticed a small wire. I yelled at Deshaun to notice and pointed it out. We smiled as we ran down the stairs. The station caught on fire as the transport was already half up and working in double time because of the emergency. We ran to the wire and saw it as a long zip line across. Deshaun grabbed onto it and suddenly flipped horizontally. He screamed as he grabbed on and started to zip line across the gap. I watched him go as the fire spread to the buildings around me. I took some deep breaths and grabbed onto it. I suddenly flipped and began to ride across it. I watched as Deshaun reached the other side the same time that the transport began to unload the freight and people. At least they were all safe. I turned around in the middle of the eternal horizon and looked at the entire city and everything I had learned to love and burning away now. I could still see the people playing, but I could no longer hear their echoes. Eventually, I reached the other side and touched the ground. I suddenly flipped as my gravity turned in favor of the flare. Deshaun helped me to stand as we ran to the entrance along the side of the building where we were. We ran to the other people near the entrance and ran inside. There were many large portals to Earth, but I noticed Deshaun stop. "What?" I yelled over the crowd of people. He pointed to Jamal, who was waving at us frantically to come toward him instead. We ran through the startled crowd to him as he greeted us. "I'm glad it all worked out. Sorry about earlier, Samantha. I was too sudden, and it was wrong to do." Jamal apologized to me. "No, it's fine. Why did you call us here?" I asked. "This portal's too crowded and it'll take you to Las Vegas. You both need to go to Colorado Springs to meet the other survivors named the Travelers instead. You got that?" We both nodded. "Alright, good. Follow me," he yelled over the noise, and we followed him past the portal and into the building. The building's alarm was going off loudly as we saw a fire blazing in the building as well. "You started a fire here too?" Deshaun asked. "We have to burn it all down. Nothing will be left here, so no one can repeat the same mistakes as before, from what happened to me and what happened to all of you. Let's go," Jamal yelled as we ran past it to the staircase. We ran to the stairs and reached the floor where Deshaun and I used to work. We ran into Jamal's office and ran inside. Sylvie was tinkering with a large metal frame. I smiled and she nodded at me. I'm glad you're here," she said to me. "I was too harsh. You have nothing to do with it," I said. She nodded and pressed some buttons on the side, and a large light blue portal suddenly filled the frame. "This'll take you right to the Travelers," Jamal yelled over the crackling of the fire which had quickly reached this level. We nodded. "Samantha and Deshaun, you are our last hope. Now, it is all up to you guys and the people we're sending you to." "Good luck," Sylvie said as she handed us 2 bandanas. Deshaun and I grabbed one each in confusion, and we all nodded at each other for the final time. Deshaun and I turned to the portal and we grabbed each other's hands. We smiled as we jumped into the portal. I looked at all the swirling colors around me as we were transported to a different dimension. After a few seconds, it all ended. We were flung to the ground. It was dark with dark gray clouds storming above us. We looked at each other and then at the mountains in the distance. We made it back to Earth. Suddenly, I began to choke. I couldn't breathe. "Bandana," Deshaun said with a weak voice, and we both put it on. Suddenly, we could both breathe again. "What was that?" I asked urgently. I don't know," Deshaun said, as lightning struck in the distance near the mountains. "Holy shit," I started. "What?" Deshaun asked. "Remember the storm?" I asked. Deshaun gasped. "We're too late." Knowing we could do nothing about it, we walked together to the remains of Colorado Springs. Many hours later, we finally arrived. Light rain slowly started to spray the earth as someone ran up to us. "Hi, I'm Eric, and you must be Samantha and Deshaun. Welcome to the main operating base of the Travelers. It's so good to see you guys. Come inside before it starts to rain even heavier," Eric said happily as we nodded. We all jogged to the city. We noticed that everyone was inside. We ran to a place with a sign that read, "The Travelers Joint," above it. He held open the door and we ran inside. He closed it and locked it as it began to storm and pour outside. He took off his mask and we did too, knowing it was safe now. "Well, you can go ahead and meet the others," he said as we walked to the counter. There were so many people around. We walked to them as some stared back at us. "Xavier doesn't know what he's talking about," a woman said to other people. "I'm just saying, if we find a way to get the chaos off the body but not kill the host, they could survive, right, Harley?" Xavier said. "They're lost, Xavier. They're gone by then." "I'm sorry to tell you that," Harley said. It could work, but who would want to get up and personal with them anyway?" another man said. He seemed to have red-tinted eyes. Eric walked up to us with a beer. "Well, this is it. The Travelers," he said as he took a sip joyfully. I had to say that it wasn't much, but it could be the right amount of people to have our revenge and take down Rye. I watched as Deshaun and Samantha took each other's hands and walked through the portal. I smiled. It was a good thing that she got back to who she wanted to be with. Jamal looked at me, and I nodded. I went to the side of the portal and quickly typed in new numbers. The portal turned purple to a new destination as Jamal grabbed the remote from behind his desk. "What's that?" I asked. "It's a detonator so we can blow this place up to hell when we leave," Jamal explained, and I nodded as I stood upright and walked to him in front of the portal. "Are you ready?" "Let's do this," I said, ready for the sudden shock. He pressed the button, and I heard the explosion begin below us. We jumped through the portal, just as the floor below us dissolved into flames. I closed my eyes as the portal suddenly sounded like the entire universe just went around me quickly. Then, it stopped. I opened my eyes and looked at Jamal. We both made it. We walked away from the metal frame and into the large room of the gold building. We went to the elevator and walked up the stairs and finally reached Rye's office. We saw him on his balcony looking over the large city. He was crouched under a large figure, fixing something on it. We walked out and he stood up. He turned around to us, dusted his hands, and smiled. "Hey, what's up?" he asked. "There was an attack on the Spark program, and it ended with it exploding," Jamal immediately said. We weren't wasting any more of our time now that the plan had officially begun. Rye sighed and shook his head. "We can't have insurgencies like this around the universe, ruining everything," he yelled in anger as he faced away from us. I quickly let a small smile slip out, happy that we were finally breaking him, more importantly, the monster. But I hid it the moment he turned back to us. "At least it's ready," he said as he walked past us inside. Jamal cursed quietly as I took a deep breath in, trying to control myself. It wasn't supposed to be ready yet. What do you mean? It's ready for a test? Or I asked as I followed him inside with Jamal behind me. No, it's ready to be used against the travelers. Yeah, no more remorse or hesitation after what you just told me. It's time, Rye said angrily as he grabbed a small intercom from his desk. I controlled my shaky breathing. All the travelers would be ripped to shreds now that they had no time to spread the news or even be warned of it. We're launching it right now, and the travelers won't even know what's about to hit them. The moment they feel the sting of revenge, I'll finish them by ripping them apart myself, starting with that agent of theirs. Agent 39 he's alive? Emil asked. Yes, they attacked me in the Citadel yesterday, and he almost killed me. Thanks for the help, guys. Anyway, I captured him so I can make him watch them be haunted. Then I'll rip his spine from his body and crush his head, Rye said morbidly. We both gulped in fear. You may begin, Rye said on the intercom. The figure outside suddenly jerked forward and turned toward us. It had red eyes under a large black cloak. It looked like a human, but we couldn't even tell. Suddenly, it flew up to the surface above us. Maybe we should run some more tests on it, Jamal said, trying to give some more time to the travelers to figure something out. Nope, it's already gone, Rye said as he smiled evilly. The figure reached the top as the rain started to hit the soft cloak of the figure. The travelers has had their turn in my game for too long, but they're about to feel the pure power from me again, Rye continued to explain. The creature looked forward as the lightning struck beside it. It calmly walked to the edge and jumped off of it. They won't see it coming. It soared to the ground with its red eyes looking for the blood of the survivors. And they will finally see the destruction and capability of my own. The figure soared to the ground and landed in the mud of the mountain. Rye smiled. It stood up and walked to the edge to see the lights of a city below through the rain. It watched them menacingly from afar as a new, unexpected threat that planned to take many lives and show no mercy. Listen and follow my commands, my corpse crawler. End of Volume 1. This episode was recorded and written by Tristan Kumar, me. This is the end of Act 5 and the end of Volume 1, so congratulations. If you made it here, you're 1/4 of the way through the book. Series, sorry. But, it's seriously much longer than that because, trust me, it gets much longer in the acts near the end. But if you enjoyed this, this is the end of the short story bit. Don't worry. Now we're going to start connecting it. But if you enjoyed this, make sure to check out Volume 2, The Travelers and The Outcasts. That will be coming to you very soon. And if you want to see the rest of it, it's of course in this playlist. But otherwise, thank you so much for being here and all the support you've given me. It really means a lot to me. I love you all. Anyway, here we go. Into the chaos once more. Anyway, have a great day. Thank you. Bye.